All right, I've tested out a bunch of GPUs in this game already. The 3060, 3080, 6800 XT. Can't remember if I'm missing anything. And those were all done on a more modest CPU platform as well with the Ryzen 5 5600X. We are now switching over to the big guns, the 5090, the 9800 X3D. This is the fastest system money can buy. Let's go ahead and see how we do. Looks like I'm currently getting over 80 FPS, could kick in the averages, but wait, at what settings? Let's take a look. We're at 4K resolution. We have DLAA turned on. This is native 4K resolution, but using a high quality anti-aliasing technique with DLAA for maximum image quality. I also have Ultra Nightmare settings enabled. So maximum settings that are available in the game currently. There is a path tracing update promised, but the date for that promise being fulfilled has not yet been told to us. So we'll have to wait and see when we get that. But for now, these are the maximum settings in the game at a full native rendering resolution with the again, DLAA anti-aliasing kit on. Now, start out the test here like, oh wait, those things are already ready to go. Anyway, these shields were already heated up, so we can explode them right away. Anyway, we will test out a variety of stuff, different locations in the game, all of that. Remember, this game does have ray tracing on at all times, at least at some level, and that is, you know, making it a lot harder to run than Doom Eternal, for example. There's also more enemies on screen, more physics going on in the environment, larger environments. There's a lot of stuff that makes this harder to run. That being said, we are like getting around 89 FPS average here, but this is not necessarily the most demanding area in the game. So how about we go ahead and try out some other stuff at max settings. Then we'll look at changing settings as well. How about we go ahead and take a look at this first area of the game, which I have found to be a bit more demanding than the second level. And let's go ahead and skip the cutscene and get right into it. So this is the opening section of the game. I've been doing a lot of my GPU testing in this area, kind of for the sake of consistency. And again, it is one of the more demanding areas that I've tested so far in the game. But again, I have not yet finished the entire game. So I imagine there probably will be areas that are even more demanding. This explosion tends to be pretty hard. Looks like it dropped our 1% lows to 64 FPS, but we did stay over 60. And there is that. Now, how are we doing so far? It looks like this combat area averaging in the upper 70s, 1% lows in the mid 60s. If you look at the frame rate counters, the one on the left is the current frame rate, the one in the middle is the average since I kicked on the averages, and then the one on the right is the 1% lows. All right, so this is absolutely playable, completely maxed out, native 4K resolution, DLA engaged, and yet, what if we wanted even more performance? Honestly, DLSS 4 looks good to the point where kicking on DLSS quality when you're on a 4K display is generally going to be the right decision, even on a card like a 5090. We're gonna get more performance, and it's still gonna look absolutely great. So let's go ahead and test this out now. So this is now DLSS quality, but otherwise completely maxed out settings. And it looks like we are getting 114 FPS-ish right here. Let's go ahead and get through these slightly more demanding bits. Like, for example, this big explosion. Curious how that gets handled now. Big explosion, 1% lows drop to 96. So, much improved. Remember, that dropped to only a little bit over 60 when we were at the DLAA native resolution. So, let's go ahead and get through this combat, but it is certainly looking like this is going to be well over 100 FPS. This would be right at home on a 120 FPS 4K display with no issues. But what if you have like a 240 FPS display, that kind of thing? 240 hertz 4K display, that's actually what I am playing on right now. Although I should mention that this is a capture card at 60 FPS, which means if the footage doesn't look smooth to you, that's due to capturing issues. The frame time graph is absolutely smooth. This game does not stutter. Whatever you think about if the performance is more demanding than you would like or whatever, this game does not stutter. The frame time graph looks beautiful. Let's not do any frame generation at the moment. Let's go ahead and try out performance mode upscaling to get an idea of how that does. Let's go ahead and restart this benchmark area. So, looks like our performance didn't go that much higher. We're only at 134-ish FPS now. Let's see how that goes. It is higher, so I know that, you know, it's not running at the same settings. The setting did apply, but it is not that much better than we were getting at DLSS quality, in my opinion. Looks like that stayed at about 116 now for the 1% lows on the big explosion. And yeah, so we are now, I would say, you know, 132 FPS average, 115 in the 1% lows, all of that. So certainly good stuff. But like I said, was not that big of a advantage going down to DLSS performance from DLSS quality. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to DLSS quality and try something else. We could try out frame generation. Now, if I'm gonna do that, I think I'm also gonna kick on my latency counter, if it hopefully works. Okay, so you'll see over here, I've now enabled the NVIDIA overlay, which can be set to track latency. You can see that we're currently around, I'm getting attacked. We're currently under 20 milliseconds of latency. I do have reflex enabled. Remember that latency is not the same thing as frame times. You can see my frame time is around 8 milliseconds right now, but there's additional processing of the inputs and bufferings of frames before they actually hit the display and all sorts of things. So the latency is, like I said, around 20 milliseconds it looks like here. Let's go ahead and kick on frame generation because it's important to note this does not make the game more responsive. However, if I go to 2x frame generation, for example, if you're on a 240 hertz display, this should get us closer to taking full advantage of that motion fluidity. Though you can see the latency is now, looks like closer to 25, 26 milliseconds. So really, this is still extremely responsive. Like, my mouse does not feel floaty. This feels good to play, but it is gonna get better motion fluidity on the, you know, 240 hertz display. So that's certainly something we could try. Notice the frame time graph goes nuts. It doesn't look like this monitoring software overlay plays well in the 1% low department with NVIDIA frame generation. So just keep that in mind. I don't think that's reading correctly. We could also go into ×3 mode, which is inserting 2 frames between every real frame. Looks like that is getting us right to about 240-ish FPS, 230s. You actually don't want to go above your monitor's max refresh rate using frame generation because then that can cause screen tearing. So it's better actually to be a little bit under. So I'm actually a little bit worried that in the less demanding scenes we're gonna be over 240, which is less than ideal. So I would rather maybe actually stay at the ×2 mode and all of that. But in general, I'm gonna go ahead and turn frame generation off. And I think this DLSS quality at 4K was probably a pretty good way to play just even without frame generation. But what about 1440p? You know, the 5090 is an amazing 4K graphics card, but that doesn't mean you have to use it at 4K. What if you bought it for 1440p, super high refresh rates, all of that? Let's go to DLAA mode. So we're at a native 1440p rendering resolution. I've turned frame generation off. And let's now run through this section. So it's looking like at a native 4K with DLAA, which again is more demanding usually than just running TAA and also tends to look better. It's looking like, yeah, this will be around 120 FPS or so. So if you're wondering what kind of graphics card does it take to max this game out at 1440p around 120 FPS, it is looking like the 5090 is unfortunately about what you would need. This game is very demanding, but again, you can turn settings down. And I just can't get enough of the buttery smooth frame time graphs, though. Realistically, playing at a lower frame rate, but with incredibly smooth frame times, incredibly consistent frame times and smooth frame time graph, can honestly sometimes feel like you're playing at a higher frame rate just because it feels very, very smooth. So there is all, that to consider. Now, looks like that hit about 120 FPS, a little over 100 on the 1% lows. And again, DLSS 4, DLSS quality at 1440p resolution does tend to look quite good. So let's go ahead and try that out just to see like how far can we push frame rates here. Looks like we're up to about 156, 57, it's around 160 using DLSS quality. So it really seems like this game struggles to hit the insanely high frame rates that Doom Eternal could do. It's just not going to be hitting those crazy numbers. Looks like 1% lows there, dropped to 127 as we had the big explosion. But as we've seen in my other testing, that doesn't mean you can't get a nice playable experience on quite a bit of hardware. I was even having a good time playing the game on my RTX 3060 and Ryzen 5 5600X base system. Played the first several levels on that platform just to make sure there were no issues. It was fine. You did have to use a lot more upscaling than I would have liked and kind of stick to the medium settings, but anyway, that is that. Now, just for fun, why don't we try out 1080p just because we can? Although I should probably maybe go back to native resolution with DLAA rather than DLSS. So I don't know which of you mad lads out there are buying an RTX 5090 for 1080p gaming. My guess would be if you're doing such a thing, it's probably a super high refresh rate 1080p display. That is maybe mostly for playing esports at the insanely high refresh rates that you can get. I guess that would be why somebody might buy a 5090 for a 1080p display. Here we can see that we are, at high refresh rates, but not insanely high refresh rates, averaging 154 so far, 1% lows at 125. And, yeah, as we go through the combat, things are staying pretty similar. Again, 152 averages, 126 in the 1% lows. So that all seems pretty good. I think what I'd like to do next is actually do a bit of a CPU test. We are right now on a Ryzen 9800 X3D. And by reducing the rendering load on the GPU by going to ultra performance DLSS at 1080p resolution, the goal here is to reach the limits of what the CPU platform can do. So I'm going to restart, and this will give us a good idea of whether any of the issues we were seeing reaching high frame rates is caused by just CPUs being unable to go higher. Now it looks like the GPU utilization is at 93%. That is indicating the GPU is not fully limiting itself. It's waiting for other stuff in the system, and it looks like we're at around 219, 220 FPS. Let's go ahead and run through here and see how that holds up. The GPU utilization is actually still higher than I was expecting. I thought with ultra performance mode DLSS, we would be at 1080p output on a 5090, we would be more heavily CPU limited. 1% lows there dipped to about 156, 152, 151. Some of this, at least, is likely the platform limitation. So this is a 9800 X3D with 32 gigabytes of, what is it, DDR5 6000 CL30 RAM, and I am on a fast Gen 4 SSD. So this is, again, pretty much as fast as the platform can get. The GPU utilization still being at 93, 94% tells me we're maybe not entirely CPU limited. but at least somewhat CPU limited. 1% low is around 160-ish. So yeah, it's looking like this just isn't going to hit the insanely high refresh rates that you could hit in Doom Eternal on either the CPU or the GPU, although it's absolutely hitting frame rates that are more than enough to enjoy the game, especially on this kind of a system. Maybe before we end the video, we should try out some other environments. So I'm going to go back to 4K resolution because, again, I think most people buying a 5090 are probably targeting 4K, and I think DLSS quality seemed to be the best way to optimize settings on the 5090. There's no point going below the Ultra Nightmare. You don't get a lot of performance out of it, and performance is already pretty good. But using DLSS quality compared to DLAA or native did seem to give us a decent performance boost. It's probably the way we'd want to play. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other kind of scenes. For example, sometimes you're in a big mech suit thing. I think this one starts there. Does this one start there? Skip the cutscenes. Okay. So we are now in a big mech thing. It has a little dash. This is the first mech mission. Thought we'd go ahead and try out a few other styles of gameplay, see how that holds up. So again, this is Ultra Nightmare. Ultra Nightmare DLSS quality at 4K output. And yeah, looking like we're cruising around at 137 averages, 1% lows at like 118. And I think we are in pretty good shape there. How about we test out some other stuff? Maybe the first dragon flight scene, which I have recently finally learned how to dodge properly. I didn't notice the directionality of this in my initial test. Let me reset frame rate averages here. Since earlier in the game, most of your dodging green stuff works timing-based rather than directional-based. I initially thought the game was like bugged and not letting me dodge these, which is what charges up your cannon and allows you to break the shields. But if you guys notice those green particle effects that I'm having to dodge, notice that there's gaps to the side. Sometimes those rotate and the gaps are on the top and the bottom. Like right there, that was the orange one, but I got hit on the... wait, I should probably actually finish killing this guy. But yeah, right there you saw one where the gap was on the top and the bottom, which I'm still forgetting to dodge properly. There we go, dodging up rather than side to side. There we go, side to side on that one. Got that. How's our overall performance doing? Our overall performance is around 130-ish averages. Using your autocannon while boosting will increase its fighter rate. Interesting. Chase down hell ships while boosting to destroy them and earn gold. Okay. By the way, this is the farthest I've been in the game because when I was initially playing, I was like, how do I dodge these stupid things? It's not charging up, and then I made benchmarking videos. So we are now as far as I have been. Anyway, performance is looking solid as expected on a 5090. But again, that is not a given on every game I've tested recently, because looks like control to disembark from the dragon. I am pressing control. Wait, look at an active land, so I have to look at the landing zone and then press control. Okay. Anyway, a lot of games I've tested lately, I mean, look at the stutter struggle going on in like the Oblivion remaster in UE5. So much stuttering happening. So it is not a guarantee that just because you're on a 5090 and 9800 X3D based system that you are going to be having a stutter-free good experience. So anyway, all right, that is my thoughts so far on the RTX 5090 here. Not insanely high frame rates, but certainly more than enough to absolutely enjoy the game. And are you guys interested in even more testing of this game? Are you getting tired of it yet? I have more GPUs. I have lots of GPUs. Anyway, also probably throw a link in the description or pinned comment where you can get this game at a discount at Games Planet with my affiliate link. That is a win-win for both of us. It's lower than the full price, and Games Planet does source their keys directly from game developers and publishers, so they are legit, even though they are less expensive than Steam, despite the fact that some sellers out there are maybe a little less reputable. Anyway, I hope all of you guys have an excellent day.